Welcome back, ELA Masters! Wow, you all worked so hard on Friday's quiz on point of view and character perspective, and so many scholars got at least 80%, like Jeremiah, Elena, Owen, Vanden, Charles, Sophia, Brent, Alex, and Ebony. Even more scholars got 100%. Can you say whoa? Congratulations, Riley, Kaylin, Oscar, Jacqueline, and Joseph. Wow, all of these ELA Masters are going to be earning 3 Vista Virtual points, and I can't wait to see who will get to earn some more today. But first, some announcements. Scholars, if you haven't already, make sure that you log on to Lexia today for at least 30 minutes. By Friday, you need at least 150 minutes. So it's so important that if you worked on Lexia for 30 minutes every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you'll be able to reach those 150 minutes in no time. I know we don't want to get a 0, even if we've been showing hard work in Google Classroom. And congratulations to all of our Vista Virtual Point winners. I just got to award 3 Vista Virtual points to some scholars who were rocking it on our quiz last week. I can't wait to see who's going to be earning prizes or points towards pizza, a homework pass, and a lunch bunch with your teachers. As a reminder, you can earn 3 Vista Virtual points from ELA Reteach at 1:30 if you're invited, or every day at office hours from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. Last week, ELA Masters, I told you that many students had 80% or more of their assignments done, like these scholars here, and I got to give 3 Vista Virtual points to these scholars. On Friday, we had about 42 third graders out of the 97 third graders that are on Google Classroom turn in our work. Scholars, this is still a long way to go to have 100% of us turning in our work. This week, I have a special challenge for you. I want to see this number, 42, go up, 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 all the way until Friday. We might get a special prize, so make sure that you log on and you call your cousin or friends that are also third graders at BCP to make sure that they turn in today's assignment too. I am so excited, ELA Masters, because today we get to start a new skill. And we are going to get to read some of Miss Yabut's favorite books in this unit. We've learned all kinds of genres. We've learned and read info text and fiction or narrative texts. Scholars, today and this week, we get to learn about a brand new genre called, drumroll please, historical fiction. Historical fiction. Rickle. Storical. Historical. Historical fiction. Can you say so cool? Great. In this unit, scholars, we are going to be focusing on that new genre of narrative text called historical fiction. As we're going through this unit, I want you to always ask yourselves, how is the setting important to the plot of the story? Last week, we focused a lot on the characters, like their traits and their perspectives, what they think or feel. But in this genre, historical fiction, the setting is very important. So we have to always be asking ourselves, how is it important to the plot of the story I'm reading? We also want to ask ourselves, what can stories teach readers about the past? Ooh, ELA Masters, if you heard that word history in historical fiction, show me a yes. Great. Finally, we want to ask ourselves, How do readers distinguish fact from fiction when reading historical fiction? Before we learn about our new genre, historical fiction, let's review. I'm going to show you guys a few texts that we've read this year, and I want you to ask yourselves, is this a narrative fiction text or an info text? Narrative, S-T-O-R-Y, or info text? Making text that seem very complicated, simple planner. Get ready and show me. Narrative text or info text? Whoa! If you showed me narrative fiction, show me a yes. Yes, Class Clown was an example of realistic fiction where the main character had a problem that could happen in real life. How many of you might have been a class clown once or twice this year? Great. Let's review another book. Get ready and show me. Narrative fiction, info text. Yes! If you showed me info text, can you say, oh yeah? Good. I know that this is info text because I see a title, I see photographs, and I see a table of contents that shows me real facts about dolphin. This book is real. Unlike Class Clown, where we had make-believe characters and a story that seemed real, info text is full of real facts. Let's try another one. Show me narrative fiction or info text. Get ready and go! Yes, this is narrative fiction. Go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back. This year we learned this genre called fantasy. And in fantasy fiction, we have characters or a setting that are not possible in real life. Oh man, I just love The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Show me a thumbs up if you love reading this book too. Again, this is narrative fiction. It is make-believe. Let's try one more. Get ready. Narrative or info text. And show me. Yes, scholars, this is info text. Again, I see photographs and headings along with captions and pictures. ELA Masters, today in our new genre, historical fiction, you'll get to put narrative fiction and informational text together to make historical fiction. Can you say, so cool? Great. You might be asking yourselves, well, Miss Yabut, what is historical fiction? Let's make sure that we pull up our resource. Just like where all the rest of our resources go to classwork, then scroll down to where you see resources and historical fiction, which should bring you to this resource here. Scholars, historical fiction is an imaginative story that takes place in the historical past and may have some real events or people. Let's try that slowly. Historical fiction is an imaginative story. Historical fiction is an imaginative story. Historical fiction is an imaginative story. Your turn. Get ready, go. Historical fiction is an imaginative story. Yes, my turn. Historical fiction is an imaginative story that takes place in the historical past. Historical fiction is an imaginative story that takes place in the historical past. Your turn. Historical fiction is an... Good. My turn. Let's put it all together. Historical fiction is an imaginative story that takes place in the historical past and may have some real events or people. Historical fiction is an imaginative story that takes place in the historical past and may have some real events or people. Say it with me. Historical fiction is an imaginative story that takes place in the historical past and may have some real events or people. Your turn. Historical fiction is an... Great job, scholars! Just like it says in the title, scholars, historical fiction is fiction. It is a narrative fiction text, not info text. And I know that means that this is a make-believe story that comes from the author's imagination. What makes historical fiction a little bit different, and is the reason why earlier I said we're adding fiction and nonfiction together, is that it takes place during a real time in history, in the past. So, in historical fiction, one very important characteristic is that the setting is important. The what is important? Good. ELA Masters, let's go ahead and add that to our Google form. In a historical fiction text, the setting is very important. First of all, can you remind me what kind of text is historical fiction? Narrative, make-believe, or info text? Real facts. Yes, this is a narrative text. It is fiction, which means that it comes from the author's imagination. If you need to, pause your video to make sure you have that now. Good. And we said that one part of STRY, one characteristic of historical fiction is that the what is important? Yes, the setting, the time and place. If you need to, pause your video to type that in now. Good. Another characteristic of historical fiction is that it is often focused on real issues of the time in history and the characters' perspective of those issues. So historical fiction is often focused on real issues, is often focused on... Good. Let's add that to our Google form. Another characteristic of historical fiction is that it is often focused on, yes, real issues of a time in history and characters. Did you just say perspective? Whoa, you guys are so smart for remembering that from last week. Give me a high five. Yes. And the character's perspective of those issues. The character's perspective of those issues. If you need to, scholars, pause your video and make sure you type that in. Another characteristic of historical fiction is that it is often focused on real issues of a time in history and the character's perspective of those issues. Great. Our last characteristic of historical fiction is that some values, perspectives, and living conditions are different from today. So those real issues that were problems at the time or beliefs that people had, they might not be the same beliefs that most people have today. ELA Masters, I mentioned that historical fiction is a narrative text, make-believe. And we know that it comes from the author's imagination. But now we also know that it is based on a real time and real issues. And we might not know as much about the period in time that historical fiction text is talking about. As a result, as good readers, we often read a nonfiction info text before we read the fiction text because it builds our schema. It builds about the setting and important people and events of the time. So in order for me to understand my historical fiction make-believe text, I often need to read a nonfiction info text to help build my schema. Go ahead and type that in and pause your video if you need some time. Good readers sometimes read nonfiction before reading historical fiction text because it builds our schema about the setting and important people and events to better understand the story. Good. Get excited, scholars. Tomorrow we'll get to read our first historical fiction text called The Bracelet. This story takes place during a real time in history when the United States government was sending Japanese Americans away from their homes and forcing them to live in a place called internment camps. This story, The Bracelet, is historical fiction. It's a make-believe story that comes from the author's imagination, and the main character, Emmy, and her family are also made-up characters. Even though Emmy and her family are not real, the setting of this historical fiction text, just like we talked about, is real. And it was during a time when the United States really was forcing Japanese Americans to leave their home. As a result, we need to learn more about these internment camps from a nonfiction text. So today we will be reading an info text article titled Internment Camps. Today we are reading a nonfiction info text article. What are we reading? Yes, let's add that to our Google form. What genre of text are we reading today? Good. Info text. We are not reading our historical fiction text just yet. Can you remind me, why are we reading an info text article today if we're learning all about historical fiction? Yes, scholars, if you said it builds our schema, go ahead and kiss your brain. Nice work, friends. Scholars, once you've finished double-checking all of your answers, go ahead and click Next.